everyone. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We just had a few technical difficulties, but we're all great. We are broadcasting live from the Office of Admission here at Princeton University. My name is Amelia Conlon. I'm Assistant Director here. I am joined by three amazing students, as well as my co-host, who also allow to introduce himself. We have two officers who are behind the scenes helping to answer all of our questions that you guys will be able to send us. You can use the Q&A box. And we will be answering them live with our students, as well as through that Q&A box as well. So again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. This is Preview Academics here at Princeton University. And I'm going to allow the students and my co-hosts to introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Edgar Preciado. I'm an admission officer. I'm also from the class of 2018. So in that time from graduating in June 2018, I got hired in December, started my first day at January 2nd. And I came back to Princeton because I wanted to get back to my alma mater. I felt really grateful for the experiences that I've had on campus, and I majored in Spanish and Portuguese, and here I am today. So basically the academic panel will comprise a few different subjects we're going to cover. We're going to talk about sort of the majors and concentrations. We like to call them here, or minors and certificates that we have at Princeton. We're going to talk about research opportunities, study abroad opportunities, the classes, and of course, academic resources that we offer to our students as well. So that being said, we're ready to introduce our panelists. If our panelists can go ahead and introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dom Oliveira. I'm a senior studying in the Woodrow Wilson School, so I do public policy, international relations. I'm formerly an engineer. I used to be majoring in the mechanical and aerospace engineering department. Like I said, I'm a senior, so I graduate in June. I'm from Northern Virginia. I live about an hour outside of DC. One of the best classes that I've ever taken here at Princeton was actually a Latin class that I took in my last semester of being an engineer. It was called Introduction to Augustan Literature, and it's one of the classes that really made me want to become an AV student.
Hi, everyone. My name's Kristina. I'm a sophomore from just outside the Boston area. Here I'm concentrating in operations research and financial engineering and looking to pursue certificates in the programs of computing and also maybe linguistics. I'm still an engineer, so still happy with all of those choices. As far as my favorite class goes at Princeton, so it was actually my first semester here. I took an integrated math and physics course. And my favorite class would actually be like taking multivariable calc, because I was really able to have a great relationship with my professor, and I sort of opened my eyes to all the resources that Princeton had available for me.
Hi, everybody. I'm Todd. I'm a junior from just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. On campus, I'm studying, concentrating in English literature with minors, or what we call certificates, in Latin and Greek literature, because I love studying the most useful subjects at Princeton. Outside of that, my favorite class that I've taken here at Princeton has to be a Milton class that I took sophomore spring. I was originally planning on concentrating in classics, hence studying Latin and Greek. But I took this class on John Milton's poetry, and my professor just started talking about how Paradise Lost is basically like this epic sci-fi drama from the 1660s. And like I knew at that point I had to study English and write my senior thesis on John Milton.
Again, so thank you, students, for introducing yourselves. If you are tuning in, we will take your questions via the Q&A box. Feel free to send those to us, and we will answer them. So you can engage with our students. You can also engage with the admission staff here. I think we have one question, though, all set.
Yeah, just to get the ball rolling, we want to ask a question to all of our panelists. I know you talked briefly about your concentrations, your majors, etc. I wanted to know what that process was like in just selecting your major, if you changed your major before you actually declared, what that process was for you.
So when I was a senior in high school, I thought I wanted to be an engineer. So when I applied to Princeton, when I got here in the fall, I thought that my mind was very much set on becoming a mechanical aerospace engineer, working at Lockheed, Boeing, one of those types of companies. And then as I sort of went through my first year and a half here, you get to take a mixture of both classes that are preparing you for a degree in engineering, but also sort of classes outside of that, working towards your distribution requirements, courses that you think are interesting, things like that. And so I took that Latin course that I mentioned in my introduction. I took a history course my freshman spring as well. And these sort of courses, when I was taking them, I sort of realized that I liked them a lot more than the introductory math and science courses that I was taking. And so I started sort of thinking about switching out of engineering and into the AV program. And then once I got into the Woodrow Wilson School, or sort of once I got out of engineering, there were a couple different factors that drew me into the Woodrow Wilson School. The first being that it's just so interdisciplinary, and so you have the chance to study a ton of different things while still majoring in public policy. The second is the task force, which is a really cool thing that they do, which is sort of a variation on junior independent work.
So yeah, so when I was deciding what to major in, I actually applied to Princeton as an ORF major, or what we call like my major, operations research and financial engineering. I applied. That's what I declared that's what I came into as. And so my first semester, I was still pretty happy with it. And then because I'm an engineer, we have to declare at the end of our first year. So I went through my like mid-semester crisis of, do I actually want to major in operations research? Is that what I want to do? And so I ended up looking and considering our computer science department and our electrical engineering department here. And so what really drew me to ORFE was the type of research I was doing. Because I think our engineering program here is phenomenal, and there's a lot of like different interdisciplinary things that you can do, especially like if I majored in electrical engineering, I could probably still do the same things that I might be doing in ORFE. But when it came down to it, I went to a bunch of the open houses, I talked to a bunch of professors, and I talked to all the research all the students and what research or what type of research they were doing. And what drew me to ORFE was the optimization and like the applied math part of it. So yeah, I stuck it out, and here I am.
So as I mentioned, I originally started studying with classics. Oh, are we on? Okay. I originally started studying classics. I took lots of intro Latin and Greek courses. And then I just sort of started like, I met this one English professor who's like really crazy. I was riding the train, I met him, and I just thought, okay, I have to take this guy's class. And so I ended up like taking this one class on Victorian literature. And I'd like hated Victorian literature in high school. I never thought I'd like it at all. But I honestly like fell in love with that. And I just started taking more English classes. And I kept like taking like, okay, I'll take one a semester. I ended up in taking two a semester. And then I took that Milton class sophomore spring. And for me, I just knew that I found what I wanted to write about and what excited me the most. And so I went for it.
So it sounds like our panelists were taking a lot of different types of courses in their first 2 years. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that Princeton has distribution requirements. And so if one of our panelists, I don't know, Don, if you want to talk about how you've kind of used the distribution requirements and what that looks like, and what that means for our students when they're finding their major, and if you find that to be restricting it in any way.
So a lot of schools have what's called a closed curriculum. So they'll require you to take certain courses throughout your career at that school. So whether it's general chemistry or an introduction to American politics, something like that. Here at Princeton, we have these things called distribution requirements. So there's sort of broader areas, and each one contains anywhere from 75 to 150 courses. They range from things like historical analysis to social analysis to quantitative reasoning, science and technology, things like that. And what that means is that our students are getting a breadth of education without being absolutely pigeonholed into classes that they absolutely hate. So for instance, like I said, when I was an engineer, I was doing a lot of the introductory engineering requirements, so things like math and science, stuff like that. But I also had to take other classes to fulfill these distribution requirements. And because there's so much leeway in terms of what you're taking to fulfill each requirement, you really get to tailor it to what you want to do. So I really like history. I really enjoy classics. So a lot of my distribution requirements have been classes in the history and classics department. But if you really like Spanish or if you really like psychology, you can use classes in those different departments to sort of help you progress towards your graduation, but also take courses in things that you're interested in and things that you might find out that you're passionate about.
Great.
So we got our first question coming in. This is a question having to do with certificates. I know some of you talked a little bit about the certificates that we have here. So the question is, if you choose to have 2 certificates, does that leave space for other courses that you might not want to have a certificate in, but you just kind of want to take elective classes just for the heck of it? So how would you sort of balance your different, your course load and adding all these extra certificates on your plate? Like, do you still have time for other courses?
I can take it. So it really depends on like what certificate you're pursuing. But say I'm pursuing a Latin certificate right now, and that's about 3 or 4 courses. And I work a little bit into my thesis too. And so for me, it leaves me plenty of extra time to take history courses. So right now I'm taking like a class on the War of the Roses, the Glorious Revolution. It sort of relates a little bit to my like independent research within English topic, but it's not at all a requirement for English. It's not a requirement for my Latin certificate either. It's just I wanted to take that class. It excited me, and so I went for it. In terms of like, you have those distribution requirements that Dom just talked about. Those give you a chance to take classes outside of your certificate or your major too. So I took a class on like skyscrapers and engineering last semester for my science and technology requirement. That was something I just always loved like building as a kid. And I just always wanted to take like a class on skyscrapers. And so I could do that. And if it filled a distribution requirement while still leaving me plenty of space for my certificate, for my major. So you have a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can take.
And Todd, would you be able to kind of let me know what a certificate is? And also, are they defined by what you are choosing to concentrate or major in?
Yeah. So certificate, they're a little bit different from like the way minors are at other schools, because what the thing about a certificate is at Princeton is they have to have a tendency to be interdisciplinary in their focus. And what you can do is you can combine them with any major. So I'll take a creative writing certificate, for example. Yes, that's something you can, a lot of people combine with an English major, and their senior thesis ends up being like writing with a novel. I have another friend who's a mechanical engineer and a creative writing certificate as well. And she's being able to do both of those. And so she's writing a novel for her certificate while she's doing her mechanical engineering research as well. You can definitely do things in multiple disciplines. Sometimes if they're of similar disciplines, you can combine them in your independent work. And that's awesome when you can do that. And other times you just get to pursue two different interests. And there's always like space and flexibility. You have a lot of courses to fulfill, so you really have the space to do whatever your passion is.
So we got another question coming in. This question has to do with office hours. I'm sure someone out there in the web was looking at what are office hours at Princeton. So can you sort of explain, any one of you, what office hours are, what happens during them?
Yeah, I got this one. So yeah, office hours are super helpful and super great. And basically what they are just designated times that your professor, preceptor, will be in their office for you to go and ask questions regarding what happened in lecture, what happened in precept, any questions you may have on your problem set, or if you're like in an essay writing class, like maybe to go over your topic and maybe brainstorm some ideas about it. And office hours are super, super helpful. And going back to what I said about my favorite class here at Princeton, the reason it was my favorite class is because I went to my professor's office hours, or I didn't even go to her office hours. I couldn't make her office hours was basically what happened. And so I emailed her like, I'm so sorry. I can't actually make it. Is there any chance that you could possibly meet with me outside of time? And I asked her to meet with me, I think at like 8 or even 7:30 in the morning. And she was like, yeah, of course. And I was like, that's amazing. Thank you so much. And office hours are a time to go and like get help. And I think also the other great thing about office hours is, yeah, they're there to help you. But another great thing about our faculty here is that they're here to get to know you too. And so when I walked into those office hours, I was just expecting her to sort of be like, okay, like come in and like get out of my office. I have things to do. But what like really took me back was I was like, okay, what's this? How do I do this? Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, hold on, like, where are you from? Who are you? Like, let's get to know each other. And because of that, I had a really great relationship with my professor. And just the fact that she made herself like so available to me was something that I found super grateful and like super helpful just in my time.
So it sounds like a lot of you, Todd, Dom, and Kristina, have really great relationships with the professors and the faculty here at Princeton. And I know that, Dom, as a senior, you just completed your senior thesis. And I know that for Todd and Kristina, they're kind of thinking about or various stages of prepping for that. So I don't know if we could have Dom talk about his work in the senior thesis project, kind of what that is, but also I know that we have other opportunities for independent work as well outside of the senior thesis. So maybe have Kristina or Todd talk about those experiences that they've had as well.
So the senior thesis is basically a year-long sort of final project of sorts that really sums up and encapsulates a lot of what you do during your career at Princeton. So you work one-on-one with the faculty advisor, and oftentimes students will choose to work with professors that they've had in classes before or something like that. I ended up getting a bit unlucky, and my top 2 choices for an advisor were both on sabbatical this year. So I ended up picking a different professor, but you get to work one-on-one with them, and you're really doing independent research. So you get to choose your own topic, and you have a lot of leeway with that. And I know a lot of people will sort of tailor this whether it be with the certificate program that they're pursuing, or whether it be their extracurricular interests or something like that. So I ended up writing my thesis on essentially the way that American political parties designate delegates to go to national conventions. So essentially looking at things like superdelegates and proportional representation and all of that. And so I got to spend a year researching that, working with this advisor and eventually writing a 65 to 70 page paper on it. And the thesis is something that's a really valuable experience, but you don't go into it, completely alone, right? You have your advisor there and you have a lot of resources during your first 3 years at Princeton to sort of help build you up to that thesis so that you're not going from 0 to 70, in 1 year.
And I know, Todd, you have some funding that's been granted to you for your senior thesis. If you want to talk a little bit about your experiences doing, and also I believe you went abroad for doing a Milton class, is that correct?
So I went abroad for my Latin class. Which should I talk about? Class abroad or?
Why don't we talk about kind of your thesis project and kind of that process and also other independent work that you've had the opportunity to do.
So for my starting out, so I knew for my junior paper and my senior thesis, I wanted to write them both about Milton. So I think what Amelia was talking about was that I, for over intersession, which is like one of our winter breaks, I got funding from the English department to travel to London to do research for my junior paper. So the English department gave me about $1,200, covered flights, housing, food, everything while I was over there. I flew over there. I got to go to Cambridge, where Milton had studied, and looked in their archives there. I got to travel to Milton's cottage out in just outside of London. And actually, they just emailed me today, actually, because they have a copy of a portrait that's on display in Princeton's library, and they wanted me to actually go into the library and get the measurements for them because they're looking to get a new copy of it. So that was for my junior paper. English department gave me funding for that, which was wonderful. And then for the senior, for my senior thesis, what the English department is doing is every year they pick 3 English majors and a professor to go to Oxford together for the summer. So I'm going to spend a month and a half in Oxford this summer. I'm going to take classes with Oxford faculty. There's going to be the Princeton professor there who's going to advise me and the other 2 Princeton English majors on our senior thesis. We're going to go into the archives there. And all of that, the value is, well, probably like around $15,000 a person, and it's completely funded by Princeton's English department. I don't have to pay a single dime for it. And I also get a head start on my senior thesis, and I didn't have to worry about finding a job for the summer. Princeton really took care of that. And so that's one program just within English, but lots of departments have funding for pretty much every department has funding for your senior thesis. If you want to travel, go abroad, do research, the funding's certainly available for you. And it's opportunities I couldn't have ever imagined when I first got in. So, yeah.
We're getting a lot of questions kind of about course selection. So I know that when you are an incoming student, you certainly will have a faculty advisor, who will also help you through that process. But Kristina, if you could talk a little bit though about that process that you've experienced as a first year and then as a sophomore going in. I know that the course catalog was released a couple of weeks ago, which was a very exciting day at Princeton.
Yes, it was. Actually, my course registration is tomorrow. I know Todd just has hit on Monday. But yeah, so as far as first year course selection goes, basically, so when you come into Princeton, you have your first orientation week and all that, and you're going to meet with your academic faculty advisor, and they're going to sort of help you through it. As far as engineering goes, it was pretty easy for me because I knew what I had to take. I had to take multivare, chem, physics, and then I ended up taking my writing seminar my first semester, which was pretty convenient because it was sort of easy to take here at Princeton. But yeah, so engineering, it's pretty much is what you're going to take. I have a bunch of my really good friends who are AB. So basically what it's like is you go in and you talk to your academic advisor or faculty advisor, and they sort of see what you are interested in and sort of say, what do you want to take? Sort of go with what's open. And it's a lot of sort of exploratory courses that you have, especially your first year. We also have the first year seminars, which are great to sort of get that one-on-one sort of faculty experience I was kind of talking about, because these are capped, I believe, at roughly 15 people. Because of that, you still get to have this super in-depth seminar with this faculty member who's probably studied this subject their entire academic career, and you get to be in a top class with them that's capped at 15 people. My sem was only 9 people. So you get that experience as well. But then as far as course selection goes later on, so tomorrow I will wake up and I will log on to the Tiger Hub and I have my courses all planned out, but I'll send it to my queue. And basically what it is you'll go again to talk to your academic advisor and sort of say, these are the courses that I want. And then depending on your concentration, depending on the certificates you're interested in, it'll sort of play out by that. So I know for Orphe, I'm taking like a 3 departmentals, and I have like 2 classes that I'm doing like for certificates. And so they go and just advise you on basically what you should take, how that works. Does it look like a challenging schedule, or is it well balanced? And that doesn't really just stop at your academic advisor, that you need their approval to sign off. But then there's also, we had Orphe advising hours, so we're talking to current seniors about the classes that they took. And there's a lot of like research that goes into it and all the course reviews that you can look at. And it is really exciting because you get to be like, oh, this is what I want to take.
Sorry. And Kristina, we have some attendees who weren't with us in the beginning. So if you could just let us know what Orphe stands for, because I know that not everyone knows what that means.
Yeah, so Orphe is my major, which is Operations Research and Financial Engineering. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
We also got a couple questions coming in about just the language requirement at Princeton. I know this is part of just sort of important for the course selection, being able to select courses that satisfy these requirements. Do you mind talking a little bit about sort of your experiences? This could be for all of you with the language at Princeton and sort of what the requirements are.
So generally the university language requirement is that you take 4 semesters at a collegiate level of any foreign language. A lot of students have this sort of already done before they get here because we allow students to test out of that requirement. So when I was in high school, I took Latin because it paid me. And so I took Latin for 3 years in high school. I took the AP test, and my score was high enough that they basically said, you have completed the university language requirement. Congratulations. The Woodrow Wilson School also requires 1 additional semester of a foreign language beyond the university requirement. And I completed that with that language class that I took my sophomore fall.
And Dom, you keep saying Woodrow Wilson School. Is that a different school within Princeton, or is that just where your major is housed?
So the Woodrow Wilson School functions exactly like any other department at the university, just like the politics department, the history department, all of that. It's not a separate school. You don't have to apply for admission to the program or anything like that.
And Todd, looks like you got some props. Your research sounds amazing from one of our students. But they were also wondering what kind of, if you had to apply for that funding, and also if you knew if other departments had funding available as well. I know we talked a little bit about this, but I know that, again, we also have some people who are joining us kind of throughout different points. So if you could just do a brief kind of overcap of that again.
Yeah, no problem. So for the summer that I'm going to Oxford this summer, I did have to apply for that funding, and there were multiple English students who applied for it, but they pick 3 majors every year. So they do pick a lot of people to go for it. As far as the money they gave me to travel over break, I did apply for it, but it was basically, it wasn't very difficult to get the funding. I just went and talked to the, it was called the DEP rep, who's the professor in charge of the department representative, the professor in charge of undergraduate studies. I just went and talked to her for a couple minutes. I'm just like, yeah, so I really want to go to England. I've never been before. I'm studying Milton. It makes sense for me to go to England, visit these sites. She's like, okay, approved. So that was really, that I did not have any trouble getting funding for that. As far as other departments, I have friends, I have a friend who's, while I'm going to be in Oxford this summer, one of my friends who's in history also just got funding, so she's going to overlap for a week there. Then I have a friend who's studying physics, who's also going to be at Oxford this summer too. So he got money, he got about $6,000 from the physics department this summer to go to Oxford. So it's certainly available in a wide range of departments. I'd imagine that almost every department has some form of research funding for undergraduates. Because one of the things is, I mean, Princeton has so many resources, especially on a per student basis. And again, they really care a lot about undergraduate funding. That's one of the things that makes the school so distinctive, is how much they care about undergraduates. And that's why they budget so much money for undergraduate research.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of questions about, research, the senior thesis, especially when it comes to sort of the different requirements for BSc students and AB students. So I was wondering if you guys could also talk about sort of those distinctions in terms of what research is required for both of those different programs.
Might be great for Dom and Kristina to answer.
Yeah, so for AB students, it's kind of tough to nail down because each department handles independent work very differently. So what economics students do for their independent work can be very different from what a Woodrow Wilson School student does, or what a molecular biology student is going to do. So for the Woodrow Wilson School, which is my home department, you'll write 2 junior papers your junior year. You write 1 each semester. Those are about 20 to 25 pages each, and that sort of prepares you for your senior thesis, which you write your senior year. And that takes a lot of forms. So some people write more quantitative theses where maybe they're running regressions on relationships between, economics and political outcomes in China or something like that. And some people write more qualitative theses like I did. But it really does vary a lot from department to department. So if you have questions about sort of specific departments, it's always best to go onto their website because they'll always have a guide for independent work that you can sort of look through, and it lays out exactly what they expect from all of their students in terms of independent work.
Yeah, and so as far as BSc goes, it's pretty similar. Our theses are kind of, I feel like, more on the shorter end, and also depends on your major. So we have 6 concentrations within the engineering school. There's operations research and financial engineering, which is what I am, civil and environmental engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical and aerospace engineering, computer science, and what am I missing? Oh, chemical and biological engineering. And so all of those, so 5 of those will require that you write a senior thesis or do some form of senior independent work. Computer science is the only concentration here at Princeton that doesn't actually require a senior thesis, but they do have to do different forms of independent work. It's just not, they don't have to sort of produce this 40 to maybe 80-page piece of work at the end of their year. And so it's very similar, I think, to AB in the sense that you're still doing quantitative and qualitative research and analysis, and you still can get funding to go and do your research elsewhere. I know that past or ORFE or operations research theses have involved modeling and predictive modeling, and also how do you optimize drugs usage in how to find the best drug for this disease and stuff like that, and then how to be the most efficient in this thing. And they're really cool, and all of the professors are very proud of the theses that they have. And whenever I've gone to meet with one of them, who's like, oh, my student did a senior thesis about this, and this might be something you're interested in. So it's definitely still a requirement, and it is definitely very similar and overlaps with AB.
Awesome. So we have another question about sort of the professors that we have on campus. Some students are really curious about, can they access a really renowned professor within their field? How easy is it to access some of the more esteemed or famous professors that we have at Princeton?
So in the fall, I took the Intro to Microeconomics class that was taught by Harvey Rosen, who is very well known as an economist. And so I had lots of access to him. He taught a precept. I wasn't in that precept, but there were people who were in his precept, and in lecture he would even call them. He'd be like, oh yeah, so-and-so, oh yeah, you have a question, what is it? So lots of access. There are even lunches. I believe there's a lunch at Forbes with him that you could go and just go in, and Forbes is one of our residential colleges here. You could go and just have lunch and talk about economics with him, which is great. And I remember the most distinctive thing about that lecture that I had is one time I was walking to lecture at the same time as he was, and he stopped and held up his hand. Oh, thank you. And he was like, yeah, of course. And we had a full-blown conversation just about fall break and what he did and what I did. And I remember I walked up to my seat and I texted my parents. I was like, I just had a conversation with Harvey Rosen.
By the way, what is a precept, Kristina?
Sorry. So a precept is basically, so for essentially most, if not all of your classes, you're going to get something called a precept. And what a precept is, it meets outside of your lecture. And it's a class of roughly 15-ish or so students. And they go over what happened in lecture. And it depends on the type of class, how many times you'll meet a week. And so this is, again, Princeton sort of honing on that undergraduate focus and that one-on-one relationship, because now it's much smaller. You can go over what happened in lecture and you still get this one-on-one connection with either a department head or just other preceptors who will be going over what happened in lecture. So that's what a precept is. So Harvey Rosen taught one. And yeah, so basically very accessible. And like I said, all professors are required to hold office hours, and you could always email any professor, be like, oh, can we meet to talk about this? So very, very accessible.
Are there any other resources or supports that you guys have been able to access or that you know are available to our students. And also kind of go along with that, what supports and programs do we have, whether they be in our residential colleges or in academic departments that we have to support students as they transition from their high school to the Princeton academic rigor and expectations?
So one of the resources that I love to use is the Writing Center. So what the Writing Center is they come in when you have your freshman writing seminar and they're like transitioning you from high school writing to college writing. The Writing Center will come into your writing seminar. They'll present about what they are. They're basically a sort of an office on campus where they have other undergraduate students and graduate students who are there to read over your essays and help you workshop them. One of the things I love about Princeton is like how much it has taught me to write and how it's taught me that writing is basically just thinking in an organized way on paper. And so what the Writing Center does is it helps you clarify your thinking. You have an appointment for 45 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, and they'll workshop your paper with you. They'll read over your paper. They'll tell you what's going well, what you need to improve on, what you can do to improve on it. And it really is just there to like ease your mind and help you know and help you keep you on track with your essays. So I had this amazing graduate student preceptor for one of my English classes. She was one of the people who helped push me to end up declaring in English. And so she is a Writing Center fellow. And so when I was like stressing out about my junior paper, I went to the Writing Center, I met with her, she read through it with me. And then the English department also held what was called like a JP boot camp or junior paper boot camp, where they just had like this whole room dedicated for a day. And they had graduate students there to help undergraduates work on their junior papers and their senior theses. And they paid for food and everything to be there. And so there are multiple mechanisms of support to help you with improving your writing. And then often for large introductory courses, like chemistry, math, econ, there's what's called the Macross Center for Teaching and Learning, which offers like tutoring services and group study sessions for large introductory classes to help you work on problem sets with groups. Because quite frankly, I mean, the reason, we all came to Princeton was because we were up for a challenge. And the work here, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult. But they're going to support you the whole way through and to make sure that you can do it.
Yeah, I think that's a nice little sort of closing sentence to sort of transition into sort of the topic that I'm seeing a lot in these questions is we have a couple questions about just AP classes and sort of preparation, some classes that might have been taken at a local college and how that sort of helps them prepare for the coursework here, and if they would be placed into higher classes. You guys can talk about your experiences with that, with AP classes and maybe dual enrollment courses at another university before coming to Princeton, how that sort of helped you to prepare you for your academics here.
Sorry. So I think it's a bit of a difficult question to answer, right? Because it's going to vary a lot depending on what school you went to. So at my school, AP Calculus was a decently hard class, and I think it prepared me fairly well for the calculus that I did during my time as an engineer here. Our AP English class was basically just a regular English class with AP tacked on the front. So I think it really depends a lot sort of on your particular high school in terms of how much AP tests or IB or dual enrollment is going to prepare you for Princeton. And similarly, the same thing goes with classes that aren't designated as AP or IB or dual enrollment. Some of those classes may prepare you better for Princeton than their AP counterparts at your school, because it really just depends a lot on sort of the environment that you're coming from.
Great.
Okay, we have another question in terms of, I know you guys already talked a little bit about this, but are there other sort of study abroad opportunities if you're not just pursuing research, for example, maybe our internships abroad or something like that? You don't have to be a junior or senior. Are there opportunities for underclassmen students as well to participate in some of these research or study abroad opportunities?
Yeah, I got this one. So we have a phenomenal study abroad opportunities. I love talking about them. I think they're so cool. If you just want to talk about study abroad in general, Princeton has so many options and so many different times that you can study abroad. I like to say that the first time you can study abroad is actually even before you step foot on campus as a true Princeton student. We have something called the Bridge Year program. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but basically what it is you'll apply after you hopefully come to Princeton, and you will basically sort of apply to go to Bridge Year, which sends a group of roughly 7 Princeton students to a country for cultural and service like immersion. And I have lots of friends who did it and absolutely loved it. And so they come back and they already have sort of like a nice little friend group, and they just sort of know each other and they have this great experience. It's a gap year and it's fully funded by Princeton. And there are, like, you go to Bolivia, and there are like, I think 7 countries total now. I'm not 100% sure on that. So if you guys are interested, definitely check that out. But yeah, so that's a study abroad opportunity that's not really related to research or internship. And then, of course, Princeton has a traditional study abroad opportunities, including we have certain programs in place, like there's an Oxford and Princeton exchange, there's a Cambridge and Princeton exchange, I believe, as well. And then there's also different exchanges specifically for different majors here. So if you are like an ecology and evolutionary biology major, there are certain programs in place for you already. So I had friends who spent the first 6 weeks of their last semester, actually as seniors, in Panama. There's also like a program to go to Kenya as well, and sort of just all these different options. And then there's also different study abroad opportunities. So yeah, basically overall we have programs in 44 different countries, which is awesome and definitely a super cool place, or super like cool countries to go and check out. And I believe also there's like a exchange at a conservatory if you're interested in doing more of a music side to it, which is cool. But then one of our like last study abroad opportunities also happens in the summer, because if you never want to take a semester off of Princeton's gorgeous campus, you can always study abroad in the summer as well. And there are 2 options for you there. You can take a global seminar class, which is pretty much what it sounds like. It's a seminar that is abroad. And this is accessible to all years. So as a first year last year, I had many friends who went and did global seminars. I had one of my really good friends was in Athens, and his was on, I forget exactly the title, but it was basically something about democracy in Athens. I had another friend who went to Vienna, and her class was called like Psychology of Freud, and she went to Vienna where Psychoanalysis and Freud, and she went to Vienna where Freud came up with psychoanalysis. So these seminars are very on topic of where you go, which is super cool. And you learn with like it's a seminar, so it's with that faculty member who's been there for a while, and has been really researching and like studying this area probably all their academic career. And again, that's capped at roughly 15 students. And then if you're still interested in doing other summer abroad opportunities, we do have internships abroad. So actually this summer I will be abroad interning at a university in Germany. And I did that. I'm fully funded by Princeton. They gave me plenty of money to go and be in Berlin for 11 weeks this summer. And that's like, as a sophomore, that's what I did. And then again, I have friends first years, and one of my best friends went to Ireland, hence did research at Queen's University. My roommate who is pre-med, she went to Johannesburg for all of her summer, and basically worked in a women's clinic. I had friends who went to like Chile, Argentina, and basically all over the world. And that was like doing actual research, doing internship work, but abroad as well. And then there are also different language programs abroad. I had a couple of friends who did like Princeton in Beijing, Princeton in Munich, and those can also sort of, I'm not as familiar with them. But bottom line is Princeton has lots of study abroad opportunities if you're not just doing research or like thesis funding, just like general overall study abroad.
And so I know that we don't have any varsity athletes amongst us. We have lots of intramural athletes amongst us, but I'm sure they also have friends who are athletes. Do you know of any athletes who've been able to take advantage of our abroad experiences at Princeton, whether that be a global seminar, or even one of our other programs as well?
So yeah, I know, like I said, I have a bunch of friends who've gone abroad and are doing these things. So I do have a friend who is on the varsity water polo team, and I believe this summer he's going to be abroad somewhere in Southeast Asia, and I'm not 100% sure where, but he will be abroad. And so it's definitely still possible to take advantage of these study abroad opportunities. He did go, he was going in the summer, so that might be something to take into account depending on their season. I know water polo is like fall. But yeah, so still definitely possible. I'm trying to think if I know other ones, but also just like if there are any engineers who are prospective about like studying abroad, because that can also be like sort of like an area of hesitation for some people. Like I said, like I'm studying abroad in the summer. I know I have a friend right now who's a sophomore who's studying abroad in Australia, and he's civil and environmental engineering. I have one of my friends this year who's also my major, like operations research and financial engineering, and next spring she'll be studying abroad at Oxford. So like that even works across engineers. So you can do that also at any point, and it still fits with like your department and all of that.
And one thing, about one of the great resources that we have at Princeton is that your financial aid package will travel with you. So if you are on financial aid, we'll also travel with you for your abroad programs. And as we've mentioned previously, a lot of the programs we also have are funded. Departments have their own funds available as well to support our students. So really, with Princeton, we never want finance to be a reason why you don't choose us or why you cannot continue your education, or why you don't have the opportunity to pursue an opportunity here at Princeton either. Yeah, so it looks like we're getting some questions as well, kind of about what it was like, though, when you were kind of starting off in the advising process here. So, like, how do you have an advisor if you don't have a major when you're coming into Princeton? And then when you do declare, what's it like, though, when you're then getting your advisor, and then also the advising through the senior thesis process as well?
Yeah, I can take that one. So as far as an advisor, your advisors are usually affiliated with your residential college. So it might not be a specific major, but generally it's like a cluster of majors. So my advisor advised a bunch of us who were interested in humanities. There might be a bunch of engineering students in my res college who had an engineering advisor or a natural sciences advisor or a social sciences advisor. And even though those fields can be broad, the advisors tend to know the faculty across all the departments in that affiliated field. So my advisor knew like pretty much all the professors in all like the English, the history, classics, the general humanities departments. So as long as I knew like what I was generally interested in, he was pretty helpful. And he would like tell me, he's like, like knowing me, he's like, you and this professor would work well together, or I think you should do a class with this professor. Like this class is really exciting for you. And I love my advisor, John Logan. He was just the most amazing guy he was like Princeton class of 1966, and he just like knew like pretty much every like professor at Princeton, and like knew like where I should take the classes and where I should go. And so he was with me as my advisor freshman and sophomore year. He was there as I was equivocating between classics and English, trying to choose a department. And he helped me guide my way through and help me figure out what I wanted to pursue. Then once I ended up picking a department, my junior paper advisor, who was a professor who taught that like Milton science fiction, Milton class that like I fell in love with. So he was my advisor all through this year for my junior paper. And again, he was there. As an English major in my upperclassmen years, I tended to be taking a good number of English classes. So he was super helpful with figuring that out, figuring out my balanced course load. And then actually, even before I turned my junior paper in, I had already picked my senior thesis advisor. We already had a meeting, and he helped me, pick my courses for the fall. And then he's also had spent 20 years at Oxford before coming to Princeton. So he was like, started writing me like letters of introduction to everyone I need to meet at Oxford this summer. So your advisors are incredibly helpful. They're professors. They know their topics inside and out. They know the general shape of the field, but they're also like people who are genuinely interested in getting to know you. And like my freshman sophomore advisor, John Logan, we would just have like hours talking about like books we like together. And like I'd go to lunch with my advisor and we just talk about books we like, or like movies, or like when I studied abroad in Italy my summer after my freshman year. He like gave me he like pointed out what guidebooks I need to do for all the sites I need to see in Rome and Florence. And really, like, yeah, again, they are like mentors both in an academic sense and in a personal growth sense. So
there, thank you. So there's sort of two questions that I wanted to ask. One was from earlier, and this recent question that came in just sort of reminded me of that previous question. But the question is, for science students, what would be the best way to approach professors to ask about research opportunities that they have available? Earlier, we also got a question from a student who said, can you do research right away, as a freshman? Are there research opportunities available for underclassmen students, beyond just junior papers and senior thesis? I think that's a sort of a good tie-in between both of those two questions.
Yeah, I can do this as the most sciencey person here. So yeah, there are definitely so many research opportunities available to underclassmen. I know someone, her like first year, like spring got involved. I think she probably could have even done it like her first year, like her first semester as well, but maybe might want to transition first. Don't like overwhelm yourself, but definitely she's electrical engineering. And she basically all you have to do is say, reach out to this professor and be like, oh, I'm interested in what you're doing. How can I like help? How can I, what can I do to help you? And more often than not, they'll be like, oh yeah, like this is what you can do in my lab, blah, 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 stuff like that. I'll even tell you so last summer I was kind of up in the air of what I wanted to do. And this was back when I was deciding like if I wanted to do electrical engineering, maybe computer science, and maybe operations research and financial engineering. And so going back to like your advisor being such an important person. So when you come in, basically you sort of get an advisor based off of what you put on your form. Again, you're not really held to that, but just sort of so you know. And so mine was actually in the electrical engineering department, Claire Gamakel, and she was awesome. She really helped me just sort of like talk it through. And so I went to her and I was saying like, oh, like, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking now I actually might want to switch to electrical engineering. She's like, oh, like, do you need like any, and I was also like, I'm not really sure what I'm doing in summer, blah, blah, blah. She's like, oh, well, if you want help, like, do you want to come work in my lab? That was really like, that was all she said, like, just an email that was like, really like, oh, do you want to work in my lab this summer? And she is like very high up, like she is doing really cool research. And I was a first year student who was still deciding whether or not I wanted to do electrical, computer science, operations research. She's like, oh, work in my lab, why not? You know, so there's plenty of ways to get involved. And even this year as a sophomore, as an orphe major, I like helped out a couple seniors working on their thesis by like just doing doing data collection for them and sort of just helping them out in that way. So you can get involved in that sense, but also just sort of getting involved with other labs as well. You can like apply for certain positions, and then often like I took a developmental psych class in my like sophomore fall, and this professor is amazing. He's fantastic, Casey Lou Williams, and he actually runs the baby lab here at Princeton. And basically like he brings in like young like babies to like toddlers and sort of like does like psych. And so like there are people who work in that lab as well. And he was like, if any of you guys are interested in working in my lab, send me an email. So it's available to pretty much everyone. Basically all you have to do is go and find someone and be like, oh, I'm interested in your research. How can I help?
Great. So we've definitely had some questions also coming in about kind of your post-Princeton support. So we will have a virtual panel tomorrow as well, which will focus much more on campus life, but you know, this also can apply also. So are there other internship or entrepreneurial opportunities that we have available? And also kind of potentially for Dom, for our senior, what kind of support have you gotten for your post-Princeton planning?
Yeah, so we have a really great Office of Career Services here on campus, and they help with things sort of throughout your 4 years, right? So if you're finishing up your first year or your second year, something like that, they can help with finding internships, things like that. And then sort of as you get closer to graduation, they can help with things like making sure you're employed afterwards. So I actually got an email yesterday from somebody in Career Services that said, hey, let's set up a time to meet one-on-one and sort of talk about what you're planning on doing. So I'm probably going to go in later next week, I think, to sort of have them look over my resume, have them give me some advice in terms of where I'm going to be applying next year and sort of what I'm looking at and things like that as well. And our alumni network here is, I think, really unparalleled. Like Amelia said, you'll hear a little bit more about it tomorrow. But alumni are super helpful, even alumni from clubs and extracurricular activities that you're involved in. So I remember sometime last year, I was part of an alumni listserv for one of the clubs that I'm in. And one of the alumni emailed and said, hey, I'm in this job. I really hate it, and I would like to switch to this field. And within 35 minutes, he had gotten 4 different emails from other alumni in the group saying, hey, I'm more than welcome to, or I'm more than happy to Skype with you, or meet up in person if you're in the New York area to sort of talk about it with you and help you see if that's really something that you want to do. So our alumni are really, really helpful in terms of doing that, in addition to that career services office that we do have.
Something, and you will be a proud alum too soon, Dom.
Yes.
So I just wanted to ask a follow-up. So are there any other like entrepreneurial opportunities on campus as well for students who want to pursue business or something like that? Because I know we don't have like a business school or something, but if there are entrepreneurial opportunities that you're aware of, or that you've had friends who have had experiences in them, or you yourself have taken part in any of them, if you can sort of share some of your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I can take it. So we do have something here called the Keller Center. If you're interested in like entrepreneurship and stuff like that, definitely check that out. I actually haven't taken any of those classes, but I have had a bunch of friends go through it. And like the E-Club here, which is like entrepreneurship and even like I always like associate sort of with engineering too, just because a bunch of my friends do end up being engineers. And there's just a lot of different groups that are interested in like startups, and maybe like they have this idea, blah, 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 like how do they get involved? How do they get funding? How do they get support from that? And that's basically run through the hub of the Keller Center. I had a friend, or I have a couple friends this year who are actually the varsity athlete who will be studying abroad this summer. He's in this entrepreneurship club that's like sort of focused on like biotech. And one of my other good friends is in it too, and she's like a neuroscience major, and he's a chemistry major, and they're all sort of working together on sort of this startup idea, like sort of started by one of our students here. That is funded, I think, through the Keller Center. So there are plenty of opportunities through that.
Yeah, so we have time for just a few more questions at 7:50 right now, maybe one or two more questions, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. So definitely for those of you watching out there, feel free to ask your questions now because we're going to be wrapping up soon. Okay, so we do have one question. We have a question about AP credit. If you guys know how AP credit is applied here at Princeton. I know we talked a little bit about that, but sometimes we get students who sort of join in a little bit late. You can sort of rehash sort of your experience with AP credit.
So generally, the way that we'll use AP credit is we'll use it to place you into higher level courses. So when I was in high school, I took AB Calculus. I got a 5 on the exam, and so I was able to place out of the first semester of calculus. So I only had to take 3 semesters of calculus towards my engineering degree. I didn't end up staying an engineer, so it didn't really matter at the end of the day. But that is something that you can use. And so while it doesn't help you graduate early or make the number of courses that you take smaller, it does free up space in your schedule so that if you want to pursue a certificate program, or if you just want to take classes that you think are interesting, you have that opportunity available to you. With foreign language classes, we will allow you to exempt yourself from the requirement entirely. Again, the number of courses that you take at Princeton doesn't change. But if you get a high enough score on an AP test, same thing goes for IB tests, dual enrollment classes, things like that. You can completely exempt yourself from that foreign language requirement, and again, free up space for you to take other classes that interest you.
So we did have a question kind of about the balance between your courses. So, what's that balance look like between fulfilling your major or fulfilling your minor or certificates, and also then those distribution requirements that we talked about in the beginning as well?
Yeah, so the balance sort of between fulfilling all these things sort of overlaps in like the areas of interest that you're in. So like I said, I'm an operations research, financial engineering major, looking to pursue certificates in computer science and linguistics. And there's actually like a very big overlap between computer science and operations research classes. So I've been taking a bunch of so computer science we call COAS here. So I've been doing like a lot of COAS classes of general interest to myself, but also like it fulfills towards my certificate, and also it counts as a departmental towards my like concentration as well. So that just sort of, it just works. And oftentimes like there'll be students sometimes will be like, oh, I got this certificate too, just because of the classes that I took, because of what I was interested in and like my concentration. And so sort of balancing it, engineering is a little different than AB, just because we have to take 36 credits over our time here, whereas AB only needs to take 31 and write a senior thesis. And so because of that, I'm taking 5 courses right now. I took 5 courses last semester. I took 5 courses the semester before that, and I'll be taking 5 courses next semester as well. And so that 5th course is always like a nice course to sort of have like towards your certificate, towards something you're interested in, and always can sort of be something fun. So like my friend and I were considering taking steel band next semester just for fun. It's like PDF only, which here at Princeton means you can take it, it's pass, D, or fail only, so you can't really take it for a grade. It's just sort of there so that you are not forced to, but like giving yourself the chance to like experience a new topic or a new area of interest. This is also just sort of important to note here at Princeton. We do offer classes like PDF, which is like pass or fail. So you can choose to just sort of, if you take a class that's interesting to you, but maybe it doesn't count for your department or for your concentration, or like maybe not for a certificate. So like my freshman or first year spring, I took a politics class. So I wanted to try it out. I realized maybe it's not my thing, so I just PDF'd it and like was happy to go to the class and learned a bunch of cool things, but it wasn't really like affecting my like GPA or like any grade that came out of that. So yeah, so you can sort of balance it like that, and oftentimes like there's overlapping interests, but you always have like an extra space sort of for what you're interested in.
Okay, awesome. So we have our last question for the panel, which is kind of, it's going to be a non-academic question. It's just a good way to sort of segue into our next panel tomorrow. So for those of you who are watching and are interested in coming to our campus live panel, that is also an option available for you tomorrow. So the question is, what is a Z group? Todd, yeah.
Yeah, I can take that. So Z group is short for Advise group, which is a group of roughly about a dozen to maybe 16 or so first year students who all live together, like either the same hall, same floor in the hall, or the same entryway. It's called an advisee group because they're all advisees of the same RCA, which stands for Residential College Advisor. A residential college advisor, similar to like an RA at other universities, is a junior or senior who will live in freshman or sophomore dorms, and they're basically like your big brother or big sister at Princeton. They are there to shepherd you through what we call Frosh Week, which is like freshman first year orientation. They're there to have one-on-one chats with you to make sure you're adjusting to life at Princeton. If you have trouble with your roommates, they're there to resolve roommate conflicts. And what I think my favorite thing that they do is they throw study breaks, which are when the residential college will just give them money to buy like bubble tea or like donuts for us, and just to take a break and to bond together as an advisee group and just talk and take a break from studying and just enjoy our time here and get to know one another. And so like my advisee group, I still have some of my best friends are like the people who I lived with in my hall freshman year. And it really is one of your first points of contact at Princeton in a way of like really getting to know people right from the beginning.
It's so funny because I'm an alum. I've been here for 4 years, and I just now found out what Z group means. Advisee group. That's so funny. You learn more and more about Princeton. So we're about done with our webinar, our virtual panel right now on academics. I wanted to thank all of you for coming out, taking the time to watch us and getting your questions answered. If you have more questions, our panelists have been so gracious enough to allow us to share contact information with you all. So I'll go ahead and share that with you. And again, congratulations on being accepted to Princeton, and maybe we'll see you in the fall. If you do, definitely feel free to contact any one of us. We can have a meal or something, catch up, get to know you. So thank you again for coming, and I'm going to go ahead and share that PowerPoint slide with the contact information for you.
So thank you guys for coming. We will be posting these online as well through the admitted students portal, so you can view them if you missed anything. Also, if you need to see that contact information again, that's available as well. But again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you to the students for joining us. Hope you have a great night.